Alright guys, my name is Goblin, and today what we're going to be doing is fully explaining the stat priority and pre-raid best in slot gear for the rogue in Classic WoW. So there's four main topics I want to cover in this video. First of all, we're going to be talking about the value of hit chance over the yellow hit cap. Then we're going to cover stat equivalencies, okay, which sounds a little complicated, but don't worry, I'm going to explain it fully. And it's basically one of the most important things that you need to understand and get a grasp of when it comes to picking your gear as a rogue. So it's probably literally the most important thing to learn, in all honesty, playing a rogue in its entirety. Once we've understood how stat equivalencies work and what those stat equivalencies are, then I'm going to teach you how to precisely calculate your gear. This means you will never be in a situation where, oh, I don't know whether this piece of gear is better than this piece of gear, because you'll be able to look at all the stats on the gear, you'll be able to get your notepad out, write a few numbers down, add the stat equivalencies together, and then you will know which piece of gear is better than the other. And finally, we're going to cover Shuttlecraft, okay, because there's a lot of interesting things about the Shuttlecraft set, particularly the 6-piece bonus, which I've personally now been experimenting with since the last video, and there's a lot of important things that I need to update you on when it comes to that information. So first thing we need to get out of the way is talking about the hit cap once again. So in my last video I basically explained how the hit cap is 6% in order for you to basically never miss with your yellow hits. A lot of people made the point that hit chance is still valuable over the cap because this increases your DPS, and this is definitely true. I by no means meant that you get to 6% and you call it a day. No, it is going to be valuable to you to stack hit chance over the cap. However, generally, the value of hit kind of diminishes over time the higher you stack it, compared to, say for instance, crit chance, whereas crit chance kind of inflates over time. The value of crit chance is much more valuable than hit chance, which is what we're going to cover in the next section. So let me explain to you what stat values are, or stat equivalencies as I like to call them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what they are, put them on the screen, and then really explain what the gist is about this. So 1% crit is equal to 23 attack power, or 1% hit is equal to 18 attack power. However, on the Horde, 1% crit is equal to 24 attack power, 1% hit is equal to 20 attack power. So what does this mean? First of all, let's cover what this doesn't mean. Okay, when I say that 1% crit provides 23 attack power, I'm not saying that when you get 1% crit on your gear that it flat out provides 23 attack power onto your stat. That's not how it works. Basically, 1% crit provides a certain amount of DPS, which is equal to you also adding 23 attack power to your character. It's basically a little bit of an equation to calculate the value of 1% crit chance compared to 1% hit chance. So as you can clearly see, 1% crit provides more DPS than 1% hit. And when you get better gear, for instance if you get into phase 3 best in slot gear, 1% crit starts to equal 29 attack power, which is obviously a big inflation, whereas 1% crit will only equal 21 attack power, which is a slower inflation, which basically concludes my previous point that crit chance is much more valuable and provides more DPS than hit chance. But it is important to know that a lot of the best in slot gear will have hit chance on it as well, and there's no way to really avoid that. So now let's teach you how to calculate gear properly. What we're going to use as an example here is the Tarnished Elven Ring. This is the pre-best in slot ring, basically for double it up as well. You need 2 of these basically for phase 2, or now that Dire Maul is out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you how to calculate the amount of attack power that this ring provides. So now I'm going to teach you how to calculate your gear. It's important to note that there's one extra stat value, and that is obviously that 29 agility equals 1% crit. So that is something to also bear in mind when it comes to calculating basically the stat values of your gear pieces. It's also why a lot of people say that 1 agility actually provides more than 1 attack power, is because it's technically providing more DPS through the value of the crit chance that's embedded into the agility stat. So let's calculate this ring. Let's work out this ring, because this is the best in slot pre-raiding ring now that phase 2 is out, and let's calculate why that is exactly, why you don't need to go for Painweaver Band and you don't need to go for the Blackstone ring either. So let's do the calculations. First of all, we have 15 agility. so that's flat out 15 attack power. Bob's your uncle. Then we also have 1% hit chance, which is 18 attack power. So we also write down 18 as a 15 and 18. But you also have 15 agility that is providing crit chance embedded into the stat. So we know that 29 agility is equal to 1% crit chance. So 15 is basically roughly half. Let's just count it as half. And 1% crit chance provides 23 attack power, which means all we have to do is divide the 23 in half, which provides us with 11.5. So we add 11.5 to 15 and to 18. So this equals 44.5 in relative attack power, because obviously the hit chance and the crit chance from this ring doesn't actually provide raw attack power. It just provides enough DPS to be equal to that amount of attack power. So you can count this as more of a score. Okay, this 44.5 number should be considered a score, and I'm going to basically go off the mic 1 second to invent a word for what this score can be. I'm just going to call the score power score because it's based on attack power, but obviously it isn't all about attack power, so we take away the attack part and we have a power score. And that power score of that item is 44.5. Now, bearing all these calculations in mind with these stat values, you can start to calculate all the pieces. Like here we've got 16 attack power, we've got 1% crit, which means that's a very simple 16 plus 23, that's the power score of the Painweaver band. And then when it comes to stuff like, for instance, this amount of agility, you get the 21 agility, but then you have to kind of do a bit of a complicated sum, which to be honest I think I'm going to cover right now because it is actually quite complicated. So first thing you need to do is go to your spellbook. The first thing in your spellbook is your attack, and just below that it will display your crit chance. Alternatively, you can get the add-on which is called Character Stat Classic. I've talked about it before, and what we need to do is know a precise crit chance. So my crit chance right now with these boots equipped is 20.84%. If I take these boots off, then I have 20.12%. What you do, very straightforward, is you take 20.12 from 20.84, which means you have 0.72. So these pair of boots, the Shuttlecraft boots, provide 0.72 crit chance. From here we can now convert this into a fraction, so we convert it into 72 over 100, because 1 is representing 100, in this case 1% crit is 100, and then 72 is our 0.72% chance to crit. So you put 72 over 100, basically a basic conversion, and we can simplify this fraction. If you remember how to do this at school, you can very simply divide each by 10, and you get, well, we can take the 0.2 off because it doesn't really matter that much, and we end up with 7 over 10 to make the next sum just a little bit more easier, and you know, just makes things straightforward. You can even do this one in your head. So we have 7 over 10. Now we need to take our original value for 1% crit attack power, which is 23, and basically pair it with this fraction. It's very straightforward. You get 23, you divide that by 10, and then you times it by 7. So 23 divided by 10 is 2.3. 2.3 times by 7 is 16.1. And 16.1 is how much attack power the Shuttlecraft boots are providing with their relative attack power from the amount of crit that it provides in the embedded crit percent chance from the agility stat. So from there you get 21 plus 16.1, which equals 37.1 power score. And there you go, a little bit of maths on a Tuesday morning for you guys. Just like being back at school. You can kind of wing it just by kind of using a bit of trial and error. You know, you can see the number 21 compared to 29, which is pretty close to 30. So it's basically about 2/3 of 30, which you can just quickly roughly make in your head. You just need to make 2/3 of 23. So divide 23 by 3, and then times by 2, which is a little bit easier. But this is how you calculate it, like, absolutely precisely. But anyway guys, let's move on to Shuttlecraft. I'm going to talk about this briefly towards the end because it is actually quite interesting. So, previous video, you know, a few people were saying that getting a 6-piece bonus is actually best in slot, pre-raid best in slot, and I recommended for you to farm the pieces if you can get them, because a lot of people in the Classic World Discord are saying that it provides more DPS than any other pre-raid best in slot, and okay, and I kind of went with that and I believed it. Then someone commented on my videos saying that Shuttlecraft 6-piece bonus is actually better than anything you can get until you are decked out in tier 1 and tier 2 gear. So I found that quite interesting, and I did a little bit more bearing on the Classic WoW Rogue Discord, and it seems to be the case that a lot of people are condoning the basically getting 6 pieces of Shuttlecraft. And what I did is I decided to buy the wrists and try it out for myself. I've got the 6-piece bonus now, and I'm starting to believe them, because the amount of DPS that this provides is a little ridiculous in all honesty. So let me put this into a little bit of perspective. I was in a Dire Maul run. The only thing I did last night was a Dire Maul tribute run. I remember going up to about 450 DPS without any cooldowns on a single target situation, because the set piece bonus just procced so many times. It is a little bit RNG, I do admit, but when it does proc, and it procs very regularly, you get a massive boost in DPS, and it is definitely worth it. So I'm going to do a little bit more testing. I'm not saying that, like, wholeheartedly that Shuttlecraft is better than replacing it with, you know, tier 1 and tier 2 pieces, but I'm going to test. You know, I'm going to get the tier 1 and tier 2 pieces gradually over time, over the next like 3 months, and I will experiment and basically report. And basically I'm going to experiment with equipping the, you know, the epic pieces and comparing that to the DPS of the Shuttlecraft sets, and I will like basically update you on that. As you can see, like, I actually do have 2 pieces of epic loot right now, so, and I've actually like unequipped my gloves to put Shuttlecraft gloves back on, because I do actually have Night Slayer gloves, and I definitely feel like that simple change has actually provided a boost to my DPS very interestingly, because it just seems to proc so often, and you see a little animation appear above your character. It's kind of very similar to the every man for himself human racial from later on in the game, the trinket pop that humans used to have between, I don't know, maybe, I can't remember when it was added, but I just remember it being in Mists and Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor, and I think it was removed in Legion. But anyway, that's pretty much where I'm going to end the video there. My name is the Metagoblin. Until my next video, ciao.